Welcome back to Son of Chelsea. Daniel Childs here. Hope you're doing really well wherever you are watching or listening to this. This is the preview for Chelsea's final game of the 24-25 campaign. It's the Europa Conference League final against Real Betis in Wroclaw. Spoiler alert, just peeking behind the curtain, I'm actually having to record this on Monday afternoon. So obviously Chelsea have just qualified for the Champions League. The reason being, I'm going out to Wroclaw. I'm going to be out there in Poland, hopefully seeing Chelsea lift another piece of European silverware. So if any of you are out there, maybe we cross paths, come and say hello. Let's hope we are watching Chelsea be successful in this final, because I've been to a lot of finals at Wembley recently that haven't been successful. And sure, we're riding high off the momentum and the positivity of getting into the Champions League next season. But that, of course, is not silverware. This is silverware. And although it's not the title that is going to come anywhere close to our previous European heritage, that, let's be honest, it's going to rank pretty low. But that doesn't mean it isn't important. That doesn't mean it can't be beneficial to this group. And that doesn't mean Chelsea should kind of shrug off this game because they've achieved Champions League qualification. Because so many of us are going out there, and the positivity that would come with that is obviously big, and I hope would propel us forward to the Club World Cup and next season as well. But obviously we face a team in Real Betis who have done a lot of hard work to get here, for them historically being in their first European final. And let's just be honest, it has been a year of the underdog. It has been a year of teams breaking a lot of their trophy ducks. I mean, just in England, if we look at it, Newcastle winning the League Cup, Crystal Palace winning the FA Cup. You look across the continent, there has been a lot of shocks this season. That doesn't mean it's sealed and written. In fact, I think what it shows you is that, Chelsea have to be ready for this game. Chelsea have to be alert. They have to be at their best. They have to have the same level of confidence, conviction, I think focus as they did in those remaining Premier League games to get the job done here. Because it is a very, very different game to nearly every single Conference League game they've played this season, because that has been the very strange thing about this competition, that really this is the first serious high stakes one. In terms of what I mean by that is where it feels like, it is more of a 50-50 game rather than one where Chelsea are so dominant, they're so clearly the better team, and they've been able to, no matter what's going on around them, are able to even put in subpar performances and get the job done. That is not going to get the job done in a final. Very unlikely it's going to get the job done in a final. So that is why the sort of approach to this game has to be radically different. So we'll go into my team lineup, what the team I'd like to see Enzo Maresca field. We'll look at Real Betis and all of that good stuff. Please give me your predictions for the game and your predicted lineups for the final game of the season in the comments below to get involved. So Real Betis, I think the funny thing about them, there's a few things, I guess, from a Premier League point of view here. Manuel Pellegrini, of course, being the head coach of Real Betis, maybe not the end of the season that they wanted, with the hopes of getting into the Champions League. They weren't able to achieve that in the Liga, but it still was a positive year for them, and of course reaching their first European final. Pellegrini, of course, once of Man City, battling against Jose Mourinho for a Premier League title, and then of course at West Ham, where Enzo Maresca was part of his coaching staff. So there is some history between the two head coaches here that I'm sure media will be very much focusing in on. In terms of their star players this year, I think the two to really focus on from a threat point of view are quite obvious. Isco, obviously, Real Madrid heritage, has gone to Real Betis and has been their starring player this year in terms he's topped for goals, assists, goals per 90, XG. He really has been the focal point, the main goal scorer, the main goal scoring threat for Real Betis. But obviously, they have added some more ammunition to that from an unexpected source, and that's Antony, who, after leaving the Man United vortex, which seems to drag down every single player, he's had 5 goals in the Liga since being loaned, and obviously has scored quite a few in the Conference League as well, especially in that semi-final against Fiorentina that was really defining for them to get to this final in Wroclaw. And he just seems to be a player that's been let loose a bit. You see this so consistently, even unfortunately sometimes at Chelsea. Players don't seem to thrive here. They go to another environment and they explode and are able to play with a lot more freedom. I think it says a lot about what's gone wrong at Man United, that Antony looked pretty hopeless. If you watched him in the first half of the season, if you watched him last season at Man United, you wouldn't have expected a player to turn it round. But it shows you, the wisdom of not giving up on a player too soon. But it is a threat for Chelsea. Obviously, he is playing like a guy who believes anytime he gets around that 6-yard box, he can score some wonder goals. And that is something to really be factoring in a final. as I constantly stress, there are fine margins, that they are sometimes and mostly defined by one goal. 1-0 is probably the most frequent scoreline you see. I probably should do some research at this point, but I really do think that 1-0 is probably the most consistent scoreline in finals, because it's that type of game, the focus, the fine margins, the stress, the tension, and no one wanted to make a mistake. And sometimes all it takes is either a mistake or one player that steps up with a moment of genius. And maybe that will be Anthony tomorrow on Wednesday. Hopefully not for Chelsea's sake, but he is obviously a big threat for them. In terms of just looking at their stats in the Conference League this year, they're actually only 10th in the competition this year for goals per match. So they haven't been frequent goal scorers. Third best defence. I think from a tactical point of view, they are, as you expect, it sounds stereotypical, but it is the Spanish style short passing game. And they're not a long ball team, and that's something that, factoring in how do Chelsea approach a team that in some ways maybe want to play a similar style to them. But as we've seen in many finals, those principles can be thrown in the bin effectively when teams know that they want to get over the line. Chelsea have shown this. Even Ange Postecoglou at Spurs showed this. So just because a team has been playing maybe more progressively during the course of the season, you've always got to factor in that needs must in these big games. And that doesn't mean Chelsea won't be facing a low block at some point in this game as the favourites in this final, undeniably. I think from a set piece point of view, Chelsea have shown an ability to get a bit better at set pieces. Obviously, set piece coach Quaver coming in from Brentford over the summer, last summer that was, and they did concede from 2 corners against Fiorentina, and they nearly conceded a third in that game that could have turned out that Fiorentina was going through to the final rather than Real Betis. So that is maybe an area for Chelsea to look to exploit. If we look at our goal that we scored against Nottingham Forest, it came off the back of a set piece, and whether it's a short corner or using the height of our defenders, just being a lot better defensively and offensively. Again, fine margin games can make all the difference if you're very much capitalising on these set piece opportunities, which is huge in finals like this. So I just wonder if that's an area Chelsea and the coaching staff will be looking at as a position to exploit against Real Betis in the final. So let's look at the Chelsea team. One of the positions we know for certain will be starting, and one player who will be on that team sheet is Philip Jorgensen. Maresca confirming before the final game of the Premier League season that Jorgensen, who basically has been the Conference League keeper, I think, give or take maybe 2 games. I think Sanchez played against Copenhagen in March, but I think other than that, it's been Jorgensen the whole way through. And he's made some big saves. Even though Chelsea, as I said, have been very dominant in a lot of these games, he has made some saves that, if Chelsea would have conceded in those moments, could have made games a little bit more dicey. And for Jorgensen, this is a huge, huge moment, because not entirely sure of his future. I mean, I would be quite surprised if he leaves just after 1 season, but, he hasn't been able to do what Petrovic did as kind of that young goalkeeper and prove himself good enough to become a starter. So with Petrovic returning, with Penders, Jorgensen really needs to step up and show that there is a substantial future for him at Stamford Bridge. And what a great time to do it in a cup final. I think he's earned the minutes really based on how much he's played and based on some of those performances. So hopefully he will step up on a big occasion for Chelsea. The back 4, many people won't do this, but I think Reece James will start again. I know he hasn't done it for many, many, many months, and the concern will be, are you pushing him too much? He doesn't need to finish the game properly, but he's put in some big performances recently. And I'm sure to him that they've been how many months has he gone without playing these games? I mean, I don't know. I'm not looking at whether he's in the red zone or not, or whether they're comfortable playing him so quickly after 1 game. It will be maybe a late call on that aspect, but he is the captain. He is leading by example. And I think for him in a cup final, where actually he's got a lot of minutes more so, he's probably had more starts this season in the Conference League than he has in the Premier League. And I just think it'd be lovely to see Reece start this final, lead the team out in a major final. I guess the big question would be, if he doesn't start, are you then... You can't really do the Lavia experiment because Romeo Lavia can't play. So effectively, I think if Reece doesn't start here, it's going to be one of Malo Gusto. I think it will be Malo Gusto, just based on Maresca's recent selections, or Josh Achimpong playing a more kind of conventional right-back role, or just playing in James's place. The back 2, I feel really harsh because I think Tosin Adarabioyo had a brilliant performance against Nottingham Forest. He was huge in terms of clearing, in terms of physically being dominant, and he's really stepped up in his final few weeks. But I do think Trev, maybe against a team who aren't as physically imposing, I think he's earned himself a start in a major final, and I think him and Levi as a back two. I've really enjoyed watching them in some of these games, and hopefully they can step up and have that focus, assurance and chemistry that I think has helped improve Levi's performances all the way leading up to his huge goal against Forest, of course, on Sunday afternoon. Cucurella, I think for Cucurella, obviously, it would be quite symbolic if he was to step up against a Spanish team, but also score another big goal for Chelsea, because he has a knack for doing it, and maybe the Marcos Alonso kind of spirit has grown in Cucurella this season. I think it's pretty obvious, self-explanatory in central midfield. I think Moises Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez, Chelsea's first choice midfield pairing for basically the entirety of the season. I don't think it's going to change for a major final. You look at the likes of Kenan Dewsbury-Hall, I'm sure Maresca maybe shakes his hand and say thank you for your service this year. You maybe will come off the bench, but listen, this serious final, you've got to be playing the serious players, and I think Caicedo and Enzo are so huge for that. Now, of course, moving into attack, you do have the benefit of this game of having the availability of Nicholas Jackson, which Maresca did not have for the final two Premier League games. We got over the line, but it was detrimental. It is detrimental to Chelsea's overall play, so that's a big thing. Mark Guiu is probably in the squad as well. Not entirely sure if Nkunku will be in the squad at all, but obviously that slightly changes things in terms of who will start behind, I think, Nicholas Jackson. I know people have been down on Jackson, but I don't know how you watch the last two games and think, I want to do that again without a recognised centre-forward of what it could mean for Chelsea's attack. I just would prefer to have that centre-forward there. So I think Jackson will start. I think Madueke off the left. I've been really excited by it. I'd like to see Noni play there in a final and see what he could do. Palmer playing as the 10, and then Pedro Neto, I think, will start on the right. Yes, it has been a quick turnaround from Sunday to this game, intensity. And he did make a lot of subs, Maresca, late on, bringing on a lot of, basically defenders to shore up the game. So hopefully the players will be ready for this. I think that is the strongest lineup you can put out for this game, in my opinion, based on those players, based on the form of players recently. Maybe it's a little bit harsh on Jadon Sancho, who of course has scored quite a few important Conference League goals, but I just think having Jackson back in the team, you want to have that natural focal point. I think obviously Palmer playing in this game. I said quite a few months ago, I wonder if Palmer, at the time I was like, would he break his record in the Conference League final? What a moment it would be for Cole Palmer to score a winner in a cup final for Chelsea. It would feel quite symbolic in terms of him kind of being the star of recent years. But any way we can do it, like against Forest, just get over the line. I'm pretty confident based on what I've seen. Obviously, it's a final, so tight games, and it's not always as simple as we've seen this season quite recently, and Chelsea have to be aware of this. Just because you're the favourites does not mean you are going to win that final, and that's what I want Chelsea to be wary of and be focused of. But it's an amazing opportunity to seal this season in a really positive way in front of the fans and go into next season feeling very positive. So those are my thoughts, feelings, everything in between. Let me know your thoughts, your predicted lineups in the comments below, and I will see you again very soon. We'll try and maybe get an on-the-go review or some coverage while I'm out in Wroclaw, but if not, I'll be back in the UK on Thursday to give you my extensive thoughts, and then basically well into not the post-mortem, because that sounds negative, but kind of the analysis, deep dive of the season, and of course heading towards the Club World Cup. Thank you again. Follow me across the socials at SonOfChelsea, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.